Yo, what is going on, guys? Frank Trades here, bringing you another no weekly stock watch list. Before we get started, though, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. And without much more being said, let's go ahead and dive into the watch list. So, first things first is earnings, as per usual, guys. And the best part about this week is there are 0 stocks that I look at on an active daily basis that I have to worry about. The only stock that I really have to keep an eye out for is Circle, and Circle reports before open on Tuesday, which makes it even better because it's a stock that I can take advantage of on that day. I don't have to wait for an after earnings post for, let's say, after close, right? I can actually take advantage of any kind of move this makes on Tuesday before open, if it does make any moves. I don't have any levels on that currently, but that is the only stock that I'm keeping an eye out for. But the good thing, like I said, it's not a stock that I look at every single day. Most of the stocks that we look at in the chat are pretty much all over with. NVIDIA is really the only one left that we all look at, but that's not going to be for a while. So besides that, great time for earnings to be over, and we can move on from this. So first things first is, you guys know I got to talk about NQ and ES. If we go to ES first, since this one's a little bit more tricky, if we go to the 4-hour or the 1-hour here, you guys can see that we actually have a double top at around 64.25. Now, usually with ES, you find some sort of support or resistance every 10 increments. Usually you find some sort of big support or resistance every 50 increments. In this example, I'm going to be using 64.30 as my resistance as opposed to 64.25, where the double top is currently at. Reason being is, like I said, usually every $10 to $50 within those two integers, you find some sort of support or resistance. So that's the reason why I'm sticking 64.30 instead of the 64.25 level. Now, after 64.30, there really is no support or resistance that I have besides the all-time high at around 64.60 and above that to 64.68. So ES is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I don't see any trend lines either on any of the other time frames that I saw that we have to worry about at all. So pretty straightforward, looking at 64.30 for continuation to the upside. And of course, my next resistance would be at around 64.60 to 64.68, around within that range, because it gets a little tricky. We haven't had too many candles close above this on a bigger time frame, but when you get to the smaller time frame, it does get a little tricky. So that's why I'm just keeping it simple and watching it within 64.60 and 64.68 for any kind of resistance for a breakout for more all-time highs. So next up is NQ. Now, NQ is pretty straightforward, and currently we are inverse Hing, or in other terms, bull flagging. In this instance, I am looking at 23,800 on NQ for a push past all-time high, going into that 23,845 level. Pretty straightforward setup as well. Not too many trend lines. The only trend line is really this one on the 4-hour, and really this trend line is pretty unrealistic. It gives room all the way up to 24,100, and we've only touched off of it once from its starting point. So I don't really count this as a real trend line until we actually test it again. But again, it is pretty unrealistic. 300 points is a pretty big push on NQ, especially with all-time highs around here in the corner. Right around the corner here, so it's going to be a little tricky to really use that as any kind of relevance or significance in our charting. So pretty straightforward setup, looking at 23,800 for a push into all-time high. So next up is the actual stocks that we're looking at. So first things first is Meta. Now, Meta currently is stuck in a consolidation. Now, with this being said, I am looking at anything below 760 to maybe even 758. 760 has been pretty exhausted for a bit now, so that's why I mentioned 758 potentially being an area to watch on this for a potential downside play. Now to the upside, 780 has been exhausted, but this could be something since, again, these are still all relatively new levels since these are all-time highs. With everything above 750 is relatively new territory, I would say. Even though we've been stuck here for this entire week, I would still consider anything below 760 or even above 780 as new territory, even though we've been here before. The all-time high isn't until 785. That's obviously going to be the real level that I'll be looking at. But if Meta happens to show any kind of momentum or strength, I will keep an eye out for 780, and then vice versa. If it's weak, I will keep an eye out for 760. If not 760, then potentially 758 with room down to that low we made at around 757. A dollar move is a lot on Tesla on these option contracts, especially with how much they move with the delta, having a 40 to 50 cent payout per dollar. So it's pretty worth it, especially when the IV starts to kick up in our favor. It's a pretty great stock to look at. That's why it's on our everyday rotation. Next up is NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA here is looking schmexy, if you ask me. If I go to the 1-hour here, you guys will see what I am talking about. Now, the all-time high with pre-market is 185.43. Now the all-time high during market hours is this area right here at 183.88, so roughly 184. And if you go to the 1 hour here, you can see we actually have a flat top across 184. So for the meantime, I will be looking to play 184 on NVIDIA. Will I look to hold to 185? Probably not. Usually these levels, every $5 increments on NVIDIA has some sort of big significance on the stock. I'm not saying that it won't happen or it can't happen, but for me and the way I like to trade, I will treat 184 as its own trade, and then I will look to trade 185 as its own trade. Now, the only thing to really keep an eye out for is this trend line on the 1 hour. Yes, we've only rejected off of it once, but considering we are at all-time highs and this is all still relatively new territory, this could prove to be significant or relevant in our trading here on NVIDIA. So again, looking at 184 and then looking at 185 here on NVIDIA for a potential continuation into the all-time high at 185.43. Pretty great setup here, pretty straightforward. Definitely 184 would be the first area to look at, and then after that we have more to look at past that. And last but not least is Tesla, our favorite stock on the watch list. If I put this in the 4 hour, you could see that we are currently not breaking out of a range, but we're in the middle of the process of breaking out of a range. You can see that we made a high at 335 on Friday, and that is where I'm going to look to continue to play Tesla with how strong it is currently. Now, if I go to the 1 hour, you can see 1 hour or 4 hour, you can see that we've had a lot of struggle closing above 335, and that's why I'm keeping an eye out for it. The next area I would look at for Tesla is 339 going into 340. Once we break above 340, that will be the break of the range that we have been stuck in for Tesla for a while now. So obviously Tesla is going to be a big thing on everyone's radar because of that reason, because of that potential breakout range that we can get on Tesla. And once Tesla gets out of this range, Tesla is a smooth rider stock. The plays are so much cleaner than they already are. So it's a big watch that everyone's going to have on their radar for this week in the Stock Hours chat. So it's definitely one to keep an eye out for on your guys' radar as well for any potential breakout if this happens to actually break out the way we're expecting. So, but with that being said, though, guys, that is about it for the watch list. Not too much going on, but those three stocks do have fantastic setups. They're all a little far away, but you know, with being the weekend, it can gap up, it can gap down. We have multiple ways to play a lot of these stocks, especially with stock like Meta. So that being said, hope you guys enjoy the watch list. Before you go, though, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. With that being said, hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a fantastic week. Peace out.